Welcome to podcast number 244. Do you want a better way to work with designers in pre-construction? Stay with us.
This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Oh yeah, everybody, we are back. Welcome to the Elevate Construction Podcast with Jason Schroeder. We are going to have some fun tonight or tomorrow morning for you. I'm loving it. We are pushing well over 7,000 downloads this month and rising. So I'm hoping next month it's up to 8,000 and then 9,000, then 10,000, and then on and on and on. And we are just going to keep jamming out and doing great things together. So we have lots of stuff today. We're going to talk about Scrum in design. This is going to be really good for you. This is something that I'm really surprised we're not doing more of, especially in the lean community. So you will want to listen to this podcast. And this is a part of the Scrum series. I'm going to talk about Scrum in morning team meetings. I'm going to talk about other uses for Scrum in construction. I'm going to do a little Scrum series for the rest of the week and close out this strong. You are going to love it. Scrum is a fantastic system. So let's go ahead and get started. There are a couple of things here that I wanted to really mention to you. There were two lessons learned. Actually, there's a bunch of stuff here, but let's just get right into it. This is our longer podcast. So number one, I'm working with Hoylu right now, and I enjoy those folks over there. I enjoy them. I think they're great. They have a really simple, and when I say simple, it's not easy to go build it. So I'm not saying that it's simple what they've done, but they have a really simple interface for people to do pull planning and other things like Scrum and use their whiteboard. And there's iterative design for for like product delivery or application or software design, things like that. And they've got just a neat little program. So got a couple of clients that are using Hoylu for their pull planning and for the visualization of their pull plans. And we were talking about how to integrate Takt into that system. And what I was saying is, if we have our Takt summaries for every week, and you could see the Takt trains running together, then you could then show the detail underneath within your pull plans and your weekly work plans and have a remarkable system. And that would be really simple. I'm predicting, again, that Takt planning is going to be the next big thing. I really believe that because not only does it work, not only is it a surprise, not only are we, a lot of us, like first to market with things like this, and not only is it easy to implement and scalable, but some of the other systems are just garbage. Last Planner is scaling right now. I'm saying that Takt is going to scale with it. I hope Scrum scales with them both. So I really appreciate that. And I was explaining why seeing one swim lane with a pull plan wasn't enough. People in the Last Planner system will say, oh, we're creating flow in the Last Planner system. We're doing this pull planning. Well, that's fine, but you're only seeing it within one swim lane. You're never, and I want to be clear about this. You will never see flow on a project unless you can compare swim lane to swim lane, and with colored highlighting on the task or identification by task, seeing that flow, that stagger, that throughput, you will never see flow on your project. So my point is, pull planning, great. Love it. Sequence is great. Collaboration, great. Talking to foreman, great. Thumbs up. Weekly work planning, great. Love all that. Here was the revelation that I had today. You're never going to truly establish flow until you can see the pull plans compared together. And that's what Takt planning does for you. So I want everybody to get out of the mindset. Creating one Takt plan in a swim lane or two or three does not give you flow. Seeing them together and how one crew, because a trade partner on the project site will have crews in multiple swim lanes, in multiple pull plans, in multiple areas. How do those crews flow from area to area, from area to area on a certain time scale throughout that project? And so inherently, Takt time, Takt planning, and visualizing the way that Takt does is such a fantastic system because it allows you to see flow. That's number one. Number two, I got a comment today from somebody who said their general superintendent said, hey, once you have your schedule built, whether it's in CPM or TACT, don't change it. Now, I want to be clear about that. I want you to imagine a center dot in your mind with an arrow going over to the right and an arrow going over to the left. Now, when people say don't change the schedule or don't dissolve logic or don't unnecessarily change it, what they're saying is do not go from where you are, the little dot in the center, do not move to the left. The left, that category is what I call dissolving logic, making it less accurate, faking schedules, faking information to make it fit in the box. Now, okay, we don't go on this left side. Let's go back to our center. Everything to the right in this little scale that I'm drawing in your minds is improving the schedule, getting it closer to being 100% accurate, refining it. You can go any length on this right side. You can't change your schedule anywhere on the left. You're never going to take it farther away from accuracy or falsify anything. But you can do anything on the right side and change it at any time as long as it's making the schedule more correct. Here are some examples of that. Aligning your CPM with your TACT plan, updating your TACT plan, reflecting impacts, reflecting a time impact analysis, reflecting a recovery schedule, doing a pull plan, refining additional detail as we get closer to the data date, taking it from a level 2 to a level 3, from a level 3 to a level 4, and then on a daily basis to a level 5. So here's what I'm saying. If you ever hear advice that says don't change your master schedule, don't change your baseline, don't change your TACT plan, what my point is, you can never change it to the left where you're falsifying data. You can do anything on the right on my little graph that I've built in your mind of making it more accurate. Now, if you have a baseline and you've changed that schedule now with more accurate information, you need to reestablish that baseline with the owner or the project team or whoever you're contracted with, or even with the trade partners, issuing a $0 change order and make sure it's there. Or if you're using a TACT plan, preferably issue that out with a $0 change order with the updates. So this is crucial stuff. We have to remember this. Those were 2 lessons that were too good that I just couldn't pass up today. Really wanted to share that with you, and so I did. So I hope that's very valuable for you. As we go into this podcast, I do want to say Elevate Construction, we do project recovery, remarkable training and boot camps, and consulting, and I also do speaking engagements for large crowds. My speaking is the most fun thing that I do. Coaching is my least fun because it's so hard. It's rewarding, but it's so hard. You have to, when I get done with a coaching call, I am so mentally exhausted. So I wanted to say project recovery, training for your company, consulting, business consulting, speaking to your organization. These are all things that we do. If you have referrals, recommendations, or you need it in your organization, please reach out to me at 602-571-8987. It sounds like an infomercial. Jason S. at elevateconstructionist.com. You know, it's really awkward for me starting a business, having been an operations guy for so long, this concept of selling. I used to propose on jobs all the time as a director or as a general superintendent or as a superintendent, but just the concept of selling sometimes grosses me out. But hey, I've got to feed the family, and the last podcast I said was, you're obligated to be rich. So let's go ahead. There's plenty of money out there for all of us. On we go. Dispatch me. Put me in, coach. I promise you. And this is my saying. I don't want to offend anybody, but you give me your excuses, give me your limits, and I will take those and I will give you results and I will win on your project. Period. That's what we're going to do. So let's go through a little bit of scaffolding on ahead of the podcast before I get into a couple of things here. Actually, there's a lot. So stay with us. Buckle up. I hope you're sitting down. And if you have a question that you'd like me to answer, please email me or reach out to me. I will even do a YouTube video for you. Or if you want to attend a boot camp, let me know. I am almost to the point of getting a class size large enough to host a superintendent boot camp in Phoenix the second week of May. So I think it's the 12th through the 15th. I need to know if you're in so I can get to that count, so I can get people confirmed. And because once that boot camp's done, people are going to want the second version of that, or people are going to want the second round of that. We need to get this going. So I need to know if you're in. So please reach out to me and let me know. So that was that. So what am I excited about in life? Okay, something cool happened today. So I ordered my own copy of Elevating Construction Takt Planning, and I ordered the book. And Katie, God love her, I appreciate her so much. She went through the book and looked for any errors, anything that's really only visible in print. You'd be surprised from an uploaded manuscript and online, the things that you don't see versus when it's in print. And so I know that the cover is beautiful. It's perfect. All the words are perfect. I know the content is all great. We went through and modified a couple of things to make sure that all of the little errors and bugs were out of the book. I was excited to update the Kindle version and the paperback. So any books that you order should be top notch. I am already amassing feedback for that book. I'm going to add a little bit to the end of the fable. I'm going to clarify some things. Tact is new for a lot of people. I'm getting a lot of questions. It's really great. But I do want to say that that's a lean rollout. When manufacturers are not manufacturers, wow, what am I talking about? Like video game creators, they will deploy a video game that's not fully baked. And they will have people, you play the game, and they'll create an interface for them to give real-time feedback. And they'll start programming the game in a way that's more useful to the gamers. Now, they do it in an addictive way. I don't use the same techniques, but it's called a lean rollout. And so a company like that with speed to market will get things to the public faster than somebody who waited for a perfect product without letting the customer see a minimum viable product. If you ever ask yourself, why did Jason let this book get out? There's a spelling error here or that or whatever. I'm focused on speed to market, blessing people's lives, getting them the information. 2 or 3 little spelling or grammatical errors is not going to hurt somebody's understanding of the concepts which are meant to change their job. So I hope that me putting myself out there for a little bit of embarrassment for things like that is setting a good example for the fact that we can't be so afraid of being imperfect that we wait to get things out to market. Remember, a good plan violently executed today is better than a perfect plan next week. I remember that story, and it's in the book, Elevating Construction Superintendents. There was a time when a superintendent was just nerding out over the schedule and wouldn't get it together and was like, Jason, you can't, we can't publish this until it's perfect, So I just built the schedule for him, got it out, communicated it to the trades, got feedback, and the superintendent literally took like $25 million worth of scope from that assistant superintendent and gave it to me because the other superintendent was just so hesitant. Was just waiting. Perfection was getting in the way. So part of lean also is this plan, do, check, act. Let's make a plan. Let's do it. Let's check it. Then let's act. Let's correct. We're never going to be able to deliver a full 100% perfect product the first time. We need to start providing minimal viable products to the owner to review. That's why you do mock-ups in construction. That's why we let them tour for punch lists. That's why we show open book. We go through the submittal process. We go through our quality processes. That's why when we're developing a product, we show it to the owner at different increments. That's the basis behind Scrum. It's a lean concept. So I did want to cover that. I'm not just defending myself. I'm just saying that I was excited about that. And I do want to say, let's say there were 2 people that were about to write a book on tact planning. Well, Jason Schroeder just spent 6 weeks getting everything down on paper, kind of hurrying through this stuff, published a book, and is now getting weekly feedback and updating. Jason Schroeder published this website for Elevate Construction that wasn't great at the beginning. Okay, well, guess what? I was just on the phone with the developer yesterday. Version number 2 is coming out, then number 3, then number 4. I'm going to outpace people because I believe in minimal viable products in a lean rollout in a strategic way. Now, we can't do that with certain things, obviously, right? When we're proposing for a project in construction, we need our proposals to be to the nth degree. But it's a pretty nice concept that's really been fantastic for me. So let's talk about some feedback here. This is actually long. So I got this and I'm going to answer this as we go. So Jason, I'm only through podcast 66, but they have been awesome. I'm glad I got it back on my radar. I've purchased many books on your recommendations, including both of yours. So I have a ton of reading to do. I went to the website and signed up today and looking forward to downloading a few of the items you have listed and have referenced in your podcast. I have sent the podcast to several supers on her project and suggested their trainings and boot camps for upcoming phases, as well as other campuses that we are working on and pursuing. You've touched base on it a few times, and I'm hoping it will be in one of the upcoming podcasts I have not listened to yet, but we have really had some growing pains with short-term scheduling and the size of the team on the current project that I'm a part of. In fact, I can cover that this week. That's a really common problem. So then he goes on to say, is there any time in your leader standard work schedule for just talking about some general items, work and non-work related? Did you get the push to go out on your own from Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins training they had on marketing yourself and your talents? 11 kids, ? Are they all yours or adopted? Just some inquiring minds questions. So he said, I personally want to thank you for the podcast. I really appreciate it and have learned a lot about myself and the things I need to work on and the tools, books you have sent my way to try and help me get there. Thank you. So I'll answer the questions. I will do a podcast on that. And I am going to give this person a call. And I did get the push to go out on my own from a business standpoint from Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins for how to do it. But inspiration which is what headed me there. All 11 kids are mine, bought and paid for and insured. They're all biological, one woman and one man. And so those are the answers to the questions. I really appreciate the person that reached out to me on this. I think it's super neat, super cool. I'm actually going to copy this into a different window for a response tomorrow. So I love that. That was great feedback. I want more and more and more of that stuff. So here's the podcast. We are already way into this. We need to get going. Let's do this. So here's the conflict. You're not using Scrum enough in design. Let me say that again. You are not using Scrum enough in design and construction. Now, I've had to repent of this too. I wasn't fully aware of agile scheduling techniques and Scrum before I did a podcast with a business consultant and then met Felipe Engineer, but thank goodness I did because this is a jam. So let me take you through some things here. Now, in IPD construction, I'm simplifying this. There's so much more to this than meets the eye. You know, in IPD, it's about integrated systems. It's about integrated teams, integrated technology, integrated spaces, integrated communication, integrated everything. Integrated project delivery is where there aren't silos, where we're all heading in the same direction together, where systems work properly together, where technology talks together, where humans talk together, where locations encourage us to talk together, and where everybody's integrated into the same incentive and survival systems. I mean, IPD is pretty fantastic. So usually on an IPD project, you'll have teams that onboard with each other. In fact, I'm looking at a book over here on the side of my desk right now. The Lean Construction Institute has a bunch of books. There's a lot of books on it. There's a book that my buddy Dean Reed helped co-write, Integrating Project Delivery. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot more to it, but let me just simplify this. If you're going to get on an integrated project delivery team, there's onboarding, there's teaming, there's the identification of conditions of satisfaction, the vision for the project, and onboarding to that. The deciding of what goals, what systems, what operations, what processes those teams will use, and how they want to do business with each other. Also, the identification of clusters, which are working groups, functional groups within that overall design team, pre-construction team, that will work on certain phases of the project or certain portions of the design. And those cluster groups are within a meeting system and in a big room location-based system, right? So we have to have the conditions of satisfaction, which tells us what winning looks like, the team composition, which tells us who, which are organized into clusters, which gives us our small, more nimble teams, more fun teams, and then our meeting schedule for when we interface. And then in pre-construction, we always have an overall master plan. And I prefer never to do that with CPM ever, but especially in design. But you'll have an overall master plan with milestones, right? And typically in construction, we use the last planner system to do pull plans to those milestones in design. And then the design team with these clusters we do use weekly work planning, and we track percent plan complete. Okay, so let me just run you through this. This is a basic process. Like I said, this can get really complicated, but imagine this. You're on a job 6 months early. The design team says they want some IPD light. It's probably a CM at risk contract delivery method, right? So you get on there. You and the team, you start doing some teaming, you get onboarded, you set your goals, you head in the right direction, you set your overall master plan, you identify the milestones, you figure out communication, you figure out cluster groups, you figure out the meeting schedule, and then you open up Mural. You get the entire design team on Mural, and you do some remote virtual pull plans to those milestones with the design team. And then you start using that in the schedule. You start helping the design team track on their weekly work plans, where they're headed and what they're accomplishing. So I've seen people use Mural, then transfer that into vPlanner. I've seen people use Mural and then Hoylu, or just Hoylu, because Hoylu has the whiteboard and then the pull planning software down below. I've seen people use TouchPlan. I don't personally recommend that. I've seen people use Smartsheet. I've seen a lot of this information. My best practice used to be Mural with vPlanner, because I really like the precedence diagram look of vPlanner, and because I come from an AutoCAD background, I prefer that graphical user interface. Okay, but when I went through the Scrum training, my first question was, okay, you can keep everything the same with IPD. You can keep you still have conditions of satisfaction, you still have teaming, you still have onboarding, you still have goals, you still have processes, you still break up the project, you still have your overall master plan, you still have your clusters, you still have your meeting schedule, and you still might even have your pull plans. But here's the brilliant part. Why not go into or break up the clusters into Scrum teams? And I'm sure that the IPD folks always intended it that way, but what it's become is last planner teams by default, when probably designers would like Scrum better, right? Even in the last planner system, even with pull planning, we start to put designers into a time scale, which makes them nervous. They want iterative, more creative design. In fact, if you read books like, I think it was The Originals, it wasn't Outliers, but anyway, there's if you study some of these books and you get, I think it was Originals. Yeah, it was Originals. It talks about how, you and I in construction don't procrastinate, but creative people of necessity procrastinate. It helps their creative juices. The longer they procrastinate, the more creative they get. The same thing with design sometimes. So when we start to push them on a timeline, especially without flow, especially when we're not aligning it with a takt plan, we can make them really nervous. So what we need to be doing is giving them the most autonomy as possible within their functional groups. So let me just do a quick overview of Scrum. So if I had to just dumb it down for myself, Scrum is where you get small teams in small durations of time with a list of things that need to be done by order of importance and priority, and that team works on moving them from to be done to in progress to complete as fast as they can. That's it. That's the simple version of Scrum. But let me explain it in a little bit more pointed fashion. Scrum has simple rules. There are 3 roles, 5 events, and 3 artifacts. So you have to embrace Scrum values and operate according to that 3-5-3 if you want to be successful, or you're not doing Scrum. So the 3 roles are the product owner, which represents the voice of the customer, sets the vision, sets the priority. So in design, the product owner over these Scrum teams could be the cluster lead, right? That is answering for the voice of the customer and interfacing with the lead designer and the customers on that weekly or bi-weekly or monthly minimum viable product, right? Which is the design, the portion of the design that needs to be done in that cluster, and then reported out on a weekly or bi-monthly basis. So that product owner creates the tasks, the tags, the stickies, whatever you want to call it, which represent the product, the voice of the customer, the vision, and he or she will sort those by priority. the Scrum Master. Scrum Master is somebody who knows Scrum, who is a leader servant, who continually helps those small autonomous team to be successful within their sprints. Developers, or the development team, those are the people that build a cross-functional team within that group of people who know what needs to be known and they have the skills that need to be had for that team to operate and develop that product or that portion of the design. So they're knowledgeable, capable, and they understand and control quality. So those are the three roles. So if you have a cluster group, one of those persons needs to be, well, not within the development team, but there needs to be a product owner that is constantly setting the vision of what needs to happen and identifying the backlog. The Scrum Master, which is helping the team, and the development team, which are the designers themselves, that and the general contractor, whoever's in that cluster, working that design in those sprints, right? The events are the sprint planning meeting, the daily Scrum meeting, the sprint review, and the retrospective. So here's how it happens. A sprint is just a fixed duration, and it's a container, start to finish, of events in the sprint backlog, meaning the tasks that will get completed in that time duration that will be able to be checked in the sprint review, right, to show a minimum viable product, and then to coordinate to the rest of the Scrum teams or the rest of the cluster groups. The sprint planning, that's a meeting where that a Scrum team will get together at the beginning of the week and say, what backlog items, what tasks for this overall project am I going to move into my sprint backlog column and do over the next week or 2 weeks, whatever the duration of your sprint is, right? Because I want you to visualize that you're looking at a board with 4 columns. Backlog, which has all the tasks, the tags or items that the backlog items for that project. If you're like, hey, the team says, hey, we have a week-long sprint, you'll move the sequence tags with the highest number of point values over to the right, and say, this is what we can get done this week. And, there are ways to calculate how many points you should aim for. And then the other 3 columns are, so it's sprint backlog, in progress, and then complete. And so throughout the week, in the daily Scrum meeting where that development team meets together, people are talking and collaborating and moving those items, those backlog items, those tasks, those stickies from left to right, autonomously in a fun way together to complete the development of that minimum viable product. And at the end of that sprint, that development team gets to review after that sprint the product increment, the minimum viable product, the velocity and any feedback that they get from the product owner to see if they're making progress according to the voice of the customer. And then there's a meeting called the sprint retrospective where the development team asks themselves, with the guidance of the Scrum Master, how can we do this better? How can we get more points next week? How can we have more fun next week? How can we go faster next week? And the artifacts are the product backlog, which those are the tasks or the backlog items that provide the stories, the vision, and the priorities of the things that need to get accomplished. The sprint backlog is basically what tags, items, or stickies need to be done in this next sprint. This is stuff that's known that we can accomplish with some capacity buffers. And then the product increment. So that means the definition of done is identified, and where we sum all of the completed work and we attempt to add value. So 3, 5, and 3. So a team. So let's attach this to clusters in IPD. So if each cluster had items, tasks, tags, stickies that were represented by a product owner, meaning a design product owner for that particular Scrum team within that cluster, and there was a Scrum Master with those Scrum team members, the development team members, the cluster team that was helping them to be a fun team as they went. And if they planned their week, identified what tasks they were going to attempt to accomplish that week, and then they huddled every day, right? And then at the end of the week, they reviewed that design with the other designers in a scrum of Scrum teams and with the product owner, right? the lead designer or the customer, and then every week figured out how they could go faster and do better, right? And we're always providing constant refinement of their product backlog, tasks, stickies, or items. And they always knew what they were going to accomplish within that week. And then they always produced a minimum viable product at the end of the sprint. You've got Scrum, ladies and gentlemen. And so what I'm saying is, in a normal IPD project, you will plan that week together and then separately. Then everybody goes and does their work within their clusters, and then you meet again to report out and to collaborate, and you check your minimum viable product, right? This is all Scrum, people. What I'm saying is, if you use the actual Scrum scheduling system where you're using the boards and you're using burn down charts to check your progress, I think our designers would be so much happier, because a lot of times our designers do not like to get locked into time commitments because it doesn't properly show the complexity of what needs to be done. And that's the genius of Scrum. Get smaller, more nimble teams that are autonomous groups that are accomplishing the items as close to the work as possible in the most nimble manner with the least amount of bureaucracy and least amount of complexity as humanly possible. So I hope that I haven't confused you on this. Like I said, normal IPD, conditions of satisfaction, you do teaming, onboarding, put the team together, put those teams into clusters, get those clusters meeting, have an overall master plan, tracking to milestones, pull plan to the milestones, and then use the last planner system. I'm saying instead of doing that, get into your IPD project, do your conditions of satisfaction, build the team, do the onboarding, get your teams together, organize Scrum teams within those clusters, get them onto a meeting schedule which follows along with the Scrum suggested meeting schedule. Make sure you have a good overall master plan. Hopefully you built that with Takt Planning. Identify your milestones and then start to track towards those milestones with burn down charts. You can pull plan if you want to, but instead of using Last Planner and the weekly work planning system in design, let's use Scrum with the burn down charts with Scrum methodologies. Let me read one more thing that it says from some of the Scrum guidebooks. Without embracing the Scrum values, meaning it's a way of thinking, it's a system, it's a process, and operating according to the 3-5-3, you're right, the 3 roles, the 5 events, and the 3 artifacts, you aren't doing Scrum. So let's do Scrum in design inside those cluster groups. It's a perfect fit. Why would we do this? Because it gives the design team more autonomy, more creativity time, and it gives people the ability to manage, do twice as much work in half the time with less complexity without trying to force it into a time scale, right? And so I just recommend this because I love designers and I want to support them. I hope this podcast, at least this episode, goes viral. So our current condition is we're still attempting to force designers into timescales and not understanding the iterative and complex nature of design. And we need to find systems that this works for. And if Apple and Google and some of the biggest and baddest companies are using Scrum, why aren't we? Here's the challenge. Learn about Scrum, learn about IPD. Let's use Scrum in design. I promise you your designers will love it. On we go.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.